back, and it is a brand new episode of the Dana White Contender Series predictions with my brother Gordo Gambles. We've been doing this a couple years now. We're going back and forth from this channel, the Liam Picks Fights channel. My name is Liam, and I pick fights here each and every week. And the Plays and Fades YouTube channel, one of the best DFS content channels that you could find out there, and also the home of our Contender Series breakdowns on even weeks. So we did number 1 on my channel. We did number 2 on Gordo's channel, and we're back here for week number 3 with the man himself, Gordo Gambles, in the building. My brother and yours, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing quite well, my man. I just finished all my my exams myself, so more time to dedicate towards the research and talking some Dana White Contender Series fights. And man, I'm looking forward to them. We actually have some really interesting scraps this week, and we did lose one of them, unfortunately, but we still have 4 good ones to talk about. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on them.
Absolutely, brother. We got a lot to get into. We got a lot of great people in the chat as well. So without further ado, let's get into it with the first matchup of the evening. We've got 6-0 Robbie Ring taking on Luis Pajuelo. I didn't listen to much of the commentary, so that's me just winging it, giving it my best attempt. And I hope I did some justice to our Peruvian brother there. But in any case, we got a really interesting matchup here, Gordo. I tweeted out earlier today, the Crimson Shin gif. I feel like this guy definitely deserves it. You see this guy, Pajuelo, take clean knees to the face, hooks. He stands in the pocket with everybody. He wants to walk people down, get in their face, throw violently, aggressively. He's not afraid of what's coming back at him. And there's been a couple times where he really paid for that split decision loss to an undefeated fighter. He took a big knee to the face in the first round, went down to a knee, and he never thought about quitting in that fight at all, kept pushing. And he really seemed like he had a lot of momentum, going in that fight. I ended up doing half my notes on paper, and this is what I had
fancy.
on the Pajuelo side. I said this guy's 7-1 pro and amateur. Impressive, right? Both of his losses, split decisions. So could have went either way. And that, loss, he's already fighting out of a deficit. He gets dropped in the early going. He gets hurt badly. The way he fought back there was very admirable to basically get a split decision out of that fight when it looks like you're going to get finished in the first round. Shows his heart, shows how much he really wants to win. I feel like he's a very game fighter, a guy who's got a very strong will to win. Corazon de Leon, heart of a lion. That's his nickname. That guy is, putting good use to the nickname, right? He's showing he's a lion heart, kind of like Anthony Smith, right? But of course he's a Peruvian brother, so that's why he's got the cooler, variation. But I also noted he's a huge KO artist, man. 9 KOs between the pros and the amateurs. He's never been knocked out himself. So he's a guy that can take people out of the fight. I mean, his last finish was absolutely disgusting, dude. I don't know if you saw that. But at the end, they had to turn it to black and white. It looked like a crime scene. And I feel like that should have been stopped, well earlier into that contest. But in any case, he just has no mercy, right? Talk about MMA nicknames. He should steal Piotr Jan's, right? He's no mercy, bro. He was just coming after that guy, beating him up, and the guy was getting, hammered. Most guys start looking at the ref like, what do I need to do here? He was like, I'm just going to keep hitting him until he goes down, So very brutal fighter. And, on the other side here, Robbie Ring, he's a guy that is a little bit more finesse, right? He's a little bit more, he's got power, but he's going to go take you down. He's going to try and bring you to the mat. He's going to try and implement that top series. And I feel like he's got a guy who's, probably not as adept on the mat, but I feel like he's got a guy who's really going to want to win, who's really not going to want to give anything up here. And I feel like he's the more dangerous fighter when this fight's on the feet. Talking about Pajuelo, I feel like his scrappiness could take him far in a matchup like this. I have not looked at the odds, so I'm going to go click over there. Pajuelo is about a plus 150 favorite, or excuse me, underdog here to a minus 165 favorite on the Robbie Ring side. And I think I understand why. Robbie Ring's going to be the guy attempting grappling. He does come out of the US scene, so probably a little bit more access to wrestling partners and things like this. But I think the points being made, in the chat, shout out to Just Win, made this point. I think it's really smart. One of the first things I mentioned, 28-year-old Peruvian prospect, Puelles, Marcos, Barzola. You look at all these guys starting to come out of Peru. It's starting to become a trend that there's a lot of talent coming out of there. The grappling is improving, right? Daniel Marcos, a guy a lot of people expected to get run over by Davey Grant, like it was the value spot of the year. And even if he didn't win that fight, I know it's a controversial decision, he went out there and scrapped tooth and nail with a guy like Davey Grant, who's been experienced, who's been at the UFC level for a long time. So I think overall, brawler, tight combinations, really dangerous on the feet. And he's a guy that just seems to me like he might be able to take more on the comeback. I feel like Robbie Ring's had a lot of fights kind of go his way, go according to plan. And this guy, we've seen him get kneed in the face and just keep on trucking, like no big deal. So I feel like talking about underdogs at plus 150 is probably going to fight very hard for your money, but maybe he's just outskilled here in the grappling. So fascinating fight, my brother. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, pretty compelling breakdown there. And you covered a lot of those points, right? I can't pronounce the names as well as you can, but we do have ourselves a guy out of the Peruvian fight scene who is able to bring these exciting fights. He's able to continue to march forward and a fight that can be really marketable. But there's a few things to notice. One, no striking defense, right? That's not something you really have to have. You have a chin like that, but it's not always heartening to see him be hit as much as he does. And the second side of things is that poor takedown defense. And I'm sure there's a few opponents who can come out there and take advantage of that. And in doing the tape, Robbie Ring looked like he definitely had the original skill set to be that guy to take advantage of it, right? A guy who is going to have the ground credentials, who does like to take it down to the mat, who is a very explosive guy himself. But really, there's just a lack of fundamental knowledge we have on the guy, right? This Robbie Ring guy is a guy who there's still a lot left to be seen, right? You look at his wins, his first 4 ended within 40 seconds against absolute cans. He hasn't fought much resistance. He won't face a guy who's going to bring as much pressure as someone like Pajuelo is going to here. And for that reason, there's still a lot of things to really understand. Now, who do I think is to be the more aggressive guy on the ground, or the guy who's initiating the ground exchanges? That's Ring. And I guess that's kind of why I'm leaning towards picking him as a side here to win the fight. However, that being said, I don't think that the unknowns of Ring allow him to live up to this minus 165, minus 170 price tag, right? When we have a guy who's at 65% implied, yet we haven't really seen him test in later rounds, and we haven't seen him faced against his better level of competition, the value then kind of sort of falls on the dog here. And I'm kind of leaning towards that here myself. I think I still have to pick Ring because he does have that clear-cut path to victory in my eyes, whether that be winning the ground exchanges, winning the control time, being the guy who's never really tasted defeat and having that in his back pocket. But would I be surprised if in the later rounds, I was able to stuff the takedowns and land more damage on the feet to win the rounds? Not at all. So to me, I think that gun to my head, I'd have to pick Ring, but there's no value on the money line for me. And instead it's more a dog or pass kind of situation, one that I don't have a full opinion on yet. So I'm more so tempted towards passing on this fight due to all the unknowns. But I guess the final thing to add too is I'm kind of harping on the cardio concerns of Ring, and that was my major concern. But he did go 5 3-minute rounds in the amateur scene a bunch of times, being the champion over there. He is someone who does have a little bit of experience in the later rounds, so I guess his cardio is okay. But when you got a guy marching you down who's not going to fall and who's going to continue to put leather towards your face, sometimes your cardio will break no matter what it's been on before. So to me, the line's about right, but not right enough for me to get a play on the favorite.
I feel you, man. Let me talk about one angle in this fight too, where you look at a 23-year-old versus a 28-year-old, and gut instinct always says, the younger fighter. But when you look at a guy like this, I feel like he could still get stronger, bigger, grow into his body a little bit more. When you're a developing male, you could still be growing up to 25 years of age. So when you look at the other side here, I just feel like Pajuelo is like ready to go right now, like as ready as he'll be probably. Maybe he could shore up some grappling or whatever, but I feel like he has some grappling unknowns. I don't know exactly what it would look like if he gets into grappling exchanges here. Maybe he has better defense than we think, but at 28 years of age, I feel like he's kind of going to be where he's at. Whereas this other guy is still going to be making improvements. And at 23, I'm 25, right? That's a huge spot to be in at 23 years of age. He could be doing, all sorts of things outside the cage, living the lifestyle and whatever. That I always think about age being an advantage at a certain point. But when you have two guys that are in this kind of proximity of age, neither one of these guys is over 30. These are prospects, right? These are guys that have been putting in time, that have a similar level of experience. Obviously, both of them have, I think, some amateur experience. So it's like both these guys have a good length of run, but the 28-year-old probably ready to go right now. And again, he's the plus money side. So it seems like he fought a little bit tougher competition on the way up. You look at it, it shows in those fights. He fought an undefeated fighter, gave him a run, lost a split decision. He fought a guy in his last fight who had a ton of wins under his belt. And granted, that guy was more of a striker, but he struck with him until that guy broke, walked him down and beat him up. So I feel like he's a really tough guy, and I wouldn't want to lay a significant chalk against him. I'd be curious what the submission prop is here. That would tell me something. Yeah, ring by sub is plus 165, not super appealing on the bet online side of things. And Pajuelo by KO plus 285. It opened to plus 235. So people are fading that. There's a little money coming in on him by decision, which is interesting. But I feel like he could definitely catch Ring here. If Ring goes for heavy grappling in the early, right? That's what Contender Series is looking for. They're looking for the finish. They're looking for you to go out there and put on a show. But I just feel like if you leave this guy Pajuelo around, he's going to eventually find you. He goes to the body, which is something that we don't often see from guys. And I feel like that could be a difference maker as well. The left hook to the body, the right straight to the body, he mixes it up. And I feel like those could be important weapons for him in this kind of matchup, trying to use attrition. But the one other thing I wanted to note, super susceptible to the calf kick. This guy's a boxer. I think he's a boxing coach at his gym. He's done some cross training with UFC level guys, Alex Cowboy Oliveira, and Daniel. What's that guy's name? The guy who loses, but it's always fun, so they keep him around. Daniel De Silva. Yeah, they keep him around, but he's been training with those guys, so he's a banger. He's going to go out there and try and put it on the line. He does have some finishing skills of his own. And the last thing I'll note here, he does have 2 wins by rear naked choke by submission on the amateur scene. So just because he's only been getting knockouts in the pros doesn't mean that he can't grapple at all. I did note that in my research and just say, maybe his grappling isn't as suspect as we think it might be. His takedown defense could definitely use some work, but it's also because he's a planted boxer, right? That gives people opportunities to get takedowns. But what I didn't see is him hanging out on his back very often. He's working his way back up along the fence, and he looked like he had a decent idea of what to do there. So it should be an interesting fight, man. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Next up,
and not I want to dwell too much on a single fight. All right, but we got a fight canceled, so I can.
We only got 4, right? Bro. So
we only got 4.
Let's get into it.
To me, the first gut instinct was the inside the distance line, right? When you look at a guy who's going to keep walking forward, and a guy like Ring who has all his wins by finish, we haven't seen him tested too much. That was my first look. Not at minus 400. To me, there are paths for it to go off 15, whether it be Ring by control base, but we also never seen the guy knocked out. So he could be just as durable, but get melted along the fence. I would prefer a better number to go and bet the under. It was my first look, but what are your thoughts on the totals?
So it's an interesting one, right? Because I feel like a lot of people, I think, are going to expect Pajuelo to get finished, but I didn't see anything. And maybe if I keep going deeper, I watched probably 3 or 4 fights from him, right? I maybe 5, right? But most of it was knockouts. Most of it was like him having these striking based fights. There wasn't all that much grappling footage in what I saw. So it didn't make me think like, oh, this guy's a complete fish on the mat. And then I looked at the topology, right? It can only tell me so much, but he has some submission wins on the amateurs. You just look at him, he's a guy who prefers to knock people out. But there was a couple of times he got on top of people or pushed them down and finished some ground and pound. So he just seems like a guy who could be dangerous in multiple phases, but haven't really seen very much of it. So if my tape study reveals, okay, this guy's just not very good on the ground, okay, maybe I changed my tune a little bit. But based on everything I saw, he looks like he's going to be competitive here as long as he doesn't get submitted in the early going. That guy's got a good front headlock series, no doubt. But like you said, he went to the decision many times on the amateurs, and then he fought a bunch of guys that he was much better than. So I feel like he's now taking a step up in terms of physicality, in terms of who he's fighting. And this opponent looked bigger too. I watched the face-offs right before I got on the air. I feel like, Pajuelo is the bigger fighter here. He stands 5'11". And I think he's probably going to bulk up a little bit in terms of the rehydration factor as well. So give me the underdog. I'll take the underdog here outright. Next up, we've got a women's fight here, my brother, and it's 2 strikers. Isis Verbeek taking on Josefine Knutsson. That's just a hope and a prayer I'm throwing out there. Again, didn't listen to much commentary on these. I was more so just taking notes on the fighting style. But in any case, Josefine, I actually, brother, let me kick this one to you first because I'm curious. What are your thoughts on this fight? I want to let you lead off here.
It is actually a pretty interesting one. First of all, what do you think of the haircut, man? You like that face off, the bright orange haircut, man? I think I can pull that off.
I don't know, but I can tell you I can't pull that off.
No, that was the first thing when I see the weigh-ins. But no, it is actually a pretty interesting matchup, but one that could lead to be pretty fun. Both these girls are pretty experienced. They both have kickboxing experience. It is actually Verbeek who has more experience in that realm, and she is someone who has fought to a pretty good record. Let me just pull up my notes here. Yeah, 51-6. On paper for kickboxing. She was in Glory as well. Knutsson also a kickboxing record 27-5, and she herself has also Muay Thai as well. So she has this more well-rounded attributes of kickboxing as well. But that 51-6 record for Verbeek is definitely something to look at. Now, if we look at the camps they're training out of, that seems to be the big talk of the town this week. And I kind of have to agree, it's pretty pivotal, right? On one side of things, you have Verbeek training with Biggie Boy. You have their training down there with Rosenstrike, which if you're working on striking, sure, that's not bad. And then on the other side of things, you have the Swedish All-Stars there with Chimaev, and that seems to be another fun way to look at it, right? If we're looking at who they're training with, who wins in a fight, right? Chimaev or Rosenstrike? No, that's not the way to look at it. It is something to keep into check there, but it is a very
Hey,
fun
do you see that Gilbert Burns fight? Yo, give me Rosenstrike plus 550. You know, he's getting submitted, but still, give me the plus 550. He's got knockout power, bro.
Yeah, who knows, man? And that's the thing too, is I think Verbeek throws a pretty bad intentions. Let me put it that way. Very strong kickboxer as well. But the main thing to understand when we're looking at these fighters is one of them clearly has, let's say, more paths to getting it done. I look at the Knutsson side of things. I see a lot more ability to go out there and grapple. I see her a lot of ability to mix it up against the cage as well. And I see her having more defensive abilities to go out there to live up to this price tag. You look at the Verbeek side of things, although she's throwing with really bad intentions and she is a very competent kickboxer, she lacks that takedown defense that I like for her to see. She lacks the defensive ability that I like to see against someone who is as competent on the feet as she is. So in my eyes, although the striking is going to be very, very clear cut, very close with no clear cut winner in that regards, the girl with more defensive liability, the girl with more, let's say, ability to mix it up on the ground, the girl who is probably fighting out a camp that the UFC wants to promote is Knutsson here. And for that reason, I do agree with her being the favorite. With that being said, you got a wide line. It is WMMA, and I'm really struggling to figure out how I'm properly going to play this fight as well, because I do think it's another fight that I agree with the favorite price tag. It's just, do I want to lay that kind of chalk on WMMA, especially on Contender Series? Does Verbeek have the technical kickboxing advantage to win a matchup like this? Potentially. So for that one, the pick is Knutsson for sure, but there are a lot of unknowns here, especially if she doesn't use that grappling.
You know, I think that this is a dog or pass situation, my man. Number one, I noted on Twitter earlier today, and I felt like, you know, this is one of the benefits of watching tape, right? When I was watching the tape, I noticed that she multiple times kneed opponents while they were down, you know, like just on more than one occasion. She did it on the road to UFC. She did it against that girl Green. And like everybody was tough and just got back up and kept rolling like it was no big deal. But like, you know, that could easily be the kind of thing that you go, why did I lay minus 300 on somebody that got DQ'd on the Dana White Contender Series? And I'm just saying, right off the rip, that's enough for me to go, oh, I'm going to be very cautious here. Number two, you know, what is her primary skill set? She likes to be on the feet. You know, she's gone against some girls where it looked like she was physically overmatching them, and she stalks women. You know, she walks them down. Most of these women are afraid of her, and they're backing up, and they're trying to find one counter, or they're trying to push her against the fence, or they're trying to look for a snatch single. You know, and I feel like a lot of them were afraid of contact, and they only wanted to strike when they were in the clinch. I don't think that that's going to be the case with Verbeek at all. You know, she's much bigger as well. You know, in terms of the measurables here, she's going to have a longer reach. And I feel like she's probably going to try and fight behind a jab. I feel like she's probably going to be competitive in the clinch. She likes to throw a lot of knees. She likes to throw a lot of elbows. That's kind of where, you know, her opponent likes to operate here as well. So to your point, she does go for some takedowns. She does go for some trips and stuff there. But I felt like a lot of that, you know, I feel like a lot of what we see on the regional scene is like testing out athleticism, and like how potent your athleticism is versus the people in your area in some ways. And I just think that this is a fight where nobody's expecting her to win, right? Not the bookmakers, not the public, not the topology voter. Like nobody is giving her a chance to win. But it's like on paper, she's the slightly bigger girl. She's 1 year older. Again, two prospects under 30. So we've got two younger girls here, two girls that don't have that much cumulative experience in MMA. What they do have is a bunch of experience in striking sports. And so now they're going to go match up in a octagon on a Saturday night on a show that's predicated on you going out there and getting violent finishes or trying to really impress the bosses with a stand-up performance, more often than not, right? Unless you've got a really good ground game, Dana White will tell you, be aggressive, look for the finish, like whatever it is. So obviously they've been signing a lot of the winners lately. Maybe it doesn't matter, but I just feel like it's probably going to be a fight where it turns into a competitive decision, and in that kind of fight, a plus 250, I just think will look pretty wild. So that's kind of how I feel about this one, my man. I definitely think that she trains with the right people. She's been doing this stuff at Syndicate MMA. She's been working with Pat Barry. Take that for whatever it's worth, positive or negative. Bunch of things like that. But I just feel like on the other side, this girl's a real unknown. Like, she doesn't have the Instagram that you could just easily go find. So nobody's going to like her in this spot. But she's a good looking enough girl. She seems marketable enough. She's got a connection to the UFC level fighter in Jairzinho. So again, she's got a head coach that's dedicated to only a handful of fighters, not a lot of them. It seems like she could be making progress. And by the way, the progress that you have to make at heavyweight is like bigger, where the consequences are dire if you get hit back. You see a guy like Jairzinho who's got massive power, but he got knocked out by Francis, right? So even if you have big power, it's not going to save you in the heavyweight division. Could these girls not get into a really competitive scrap where both of them get hurt? I wouldn't be surprised by that. I could definitely see that happening. Both of these girls I've seen bleed, get cut, get hit. I feel like we could see a bloody, wild affair here. So again, it just seems to me at plus 250, I'm seeing on Bet Online. Seems like a dogger pass situation to me.
That's back-to-back dogs for you, man. What's your thought on any totals or props on this one? What seems to be the most likely outcome for you?
I think it's going to go to decision, and more often than not. Both of these women are dangerous. You're looking at Knutsson ITD taking some money, plus 325. It opened down to a plus 280. Verbeek by KO opened plus 1,300 down to a plus 1,200. Knutsson by sub has been nuked, plus 900 down to a plus 450, cut in half. So a lot of love that way. Let's see what Verbeek by decision is, because that's what I'm curious about. Plus 350 and moving in the opposite direction. So, that's interesting enough, but why wouldn't I just take the money line at plus 250,
You know what, man? The biggest underdog has won every of the first two cards so far, right?
Oh, and by the way,
Almeida.
I said Cesar Almeida was going to win that fight.
Actually, it wasn't even Cesar Almeida. It was the first fight of the night. It was against oh no.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It was the Peruvian.
Yeah.
It starts with a B, I think.
B. Yep. He got signed to the UFC already, so he's down.
Somebody dropped that in the chat if y'all remember. But in any case, yeah, man, I don't try and just like pick the dog for the sake of picking the dog, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not me, but I feel it in these two spots. Like, I'm going to do more research. If I change my mind, y'all will know. But in any case, it's just, I look at this and I say, you got one guy who's an absolute dog in Pajuelo. I feel like he's going to fight hard for your. He's a dangerous striker. Borchas. Thank you. I knew it started with a B. And then on the other side, I feel like Isis Verbeek is a slightly bigger girl who's marketable, who's got some upside. They're both prospects under 30. She's plus 250 in a fight that could easily go to decision. What? I don't see it. So, yeah, give me. Oh, thank you. Shout out to Crystal for that comment. I appreciate you for that. So with any case, let's move on to the next one here, brother. Unless you have anything to add on the way out for this fight. Sweet. Next one up, we've got Oban Elliott taking on Kaik Brito in the next fight of the night. And this one is going to be taking place in the welterweight division. And my brother, I'm going to lead this one off with you. How do you feel about this fight? Do you like either side?
To me, this is another very fun one. It reminds me a lot of the one we had last week when we had Sam Mealsville going against Mill, right? The fact where we have not a clear grappler versus striker, but one where you think you have these guys both have their advantages in their own right. Brito to me is a guy who seems to be very explosive on the feet, very good striking style. He likes to push forward, good forward pace, good striking as well. Whereas Elliott's more so a predominant grappler. He's coming out of that Cage Warrior scene where we won't talk too much trash about Cage Warrior here, especially what went on last week, right? But that's definitely there. who prefers to grapple in that case. I think there's clear advantages for the feet for Brito, clear advantage on the ground for Elliott. It's kind of how it's going to play out that way. So if you look towards other things, right, we have seen Brito take it down and controlled, and that was against one guy. Only guy to control him on the mat was against Mateusz Rebecki, a guy who we both rate pretty highly, had some success Dana White Contender Series himself. And if that's the only guy taking you down and controlling you, it kind of leads you towards a striker here in Brito. I think if we look at the tail of the tape here, we have a guy who's 25, a guy who's 26, very, very close that way. But one of these guys has a much better combined opponent record. I mean, Brito's 16-4 so far as pros, and his combined opponents are 121, 48, and 3. A very good level of competition. Elliott, not too bad himself, 35, 23, and 1, but clearly Brito has faced a better level of competition. He's out there training hard for that kind of thing and facing some good opponents. And the way to beat him is go out there and to take him down, control him on the mat. And although Elliott may be able to do that early on, we've seen Elliott slow down. We've seen Elliott fight to the pace of his opponents as well. We've seen Elliott have his own struggles. And for that reason, it feels like one of these fights where the striking of Brito is going to take over late. That same thing in that Emil Sonmez fight, right? Although that was a very sloppy fight, the initial idea towards that one was Sonmez is going to control him early. Emil's going to take over as this fight goes and outstrike him down the stretch, winning the last couple rounds. I kind of feel like this is how this one's going to go here. So I do think Elliott's able to get takedowns, exploit that poor takedown defense of Brito, but Brito's be the more effective striker. He's going to have the ability to pressure Elliott down the stretch, especially as Elliott gets tired. And for that reason, I do think Brito's able to squeak out a couple rounds or a late finish. And I do think his striking is pretty elite. So I think I'm going to take the Brito side here.
Shout out to our guy JWB with the dono, says solid info. Absolutely. Our guy Gordo spitting knowledge. And I think that this is a fascinating fight, my man. We've got on the one hand, Oban Elliott. I listened to interviews on this one, right? I didn't listen to interviews on every fight, but I listened to Oban Elliott's interview, and he seems like a guy who's locked in, who's all in, who really wants this, who's, going to fight hard. But let's take a look here at the line. We've got Kaik Brito is coming in here as a favorite, which Oban Elliott actually said, I bet they've got me as an underdog for this one. And yes, they do. Right. And I think it's with some good reason, right? Don't have an official reach here, but you've got height parity between these two guys. And I feel like Oban Elliott is actually a little bit more muscular, just a little bit more well-built. But I do think that the striking fundamentals from Brito and just the way he hits people and how they react, it's a little bit different, right? I feel like we've seen Oban Elliott, get off on some big shots. He's definitely hurt some guys, but he just doesn't seem to have that same kind of one-punch killer power that we've seen from Brito. Brito also a guy with a ton of experience. Oban Elliott, I believe, is a similar age. 1 year younger, so 25 and 26, two prospects under 30, but Kaik Brito has 20 fights to his name, double the amount of professional experience. So that's something I always look at. I always talk about, I have a system that I look at, which is, a younger fighter with more experience doesn't fit that, right? He is 1 year older, but it's a prospect with double the experience. And the Brazilian regional scene, you could definitely get some cupcake matchups, but you'll also fight some tough guys along the way. And the fact that he fought a Mateusz Rebecki speaks to the fact that he's taking on tough competition. He's not afraid to do that. So I feel like this is a guy who is probably, a guy you don't want to draw on the Contender Series. He's a really dangerous knockout threat. And we see a lot of times guys get a little bit panicky, a little bit jittery. They're fighting in front of Dana White, 25 years of age, big spot for him, going out there against the guy who's been doing it for a lot longer, against a higher level of opponent. It's going to be a tough ask, but again, he is getting the underdog money here. So I understand if people want to take the shot on some grappling upside, if they think he's going to be able to pull it off, whether that's by decision or not. But I just think that this is going to be it's going to be a difficult fight for him because Brito is a scary man, a guy you don't want to stand in front of at all. And I feel like he's going to create some dynamic scrambles if he's put on his back in this fight as well. So I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing from the top position for Elliott in this fight. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on this one, Gordo?
Same question as before. I was looking at a lot of these totals here, and for me, a lot of the finishing abilities stays on that Brito side, and I just don't see much reason to go aside from that. I think the main path to victory for Elliott would be a control-based decision, which I think is not an impossible outcome. Do you agree with that being his path to victory, or do you see any submission upside for him on the mat?
I don't think it's impossible. The way Rizbecki was able to finish him was really from a control position, able to get that knee over the top. And then those elbows were brutal. Has Brito been submitted? Let's check the record here. No, 3-0 to the sub. So honestly, I think it was possible. Here we go. Very interesting. Elliott traveled 2 days ago from UK. Not good. Yeah, that is
Knocking
not
up the
enough
cardio.
time. So thank you for the dono, brother, but also thank you for the info. Super important. So the level of preparation maybe not there. Curious to know if Brito got there much earlier, but I got to just say straight off the bat, betting on guys named Brito from Brazil has been very profitable for me in the past, right? Our guy Joe Anderson out there smashing fools, dangerous individual. So I think this is another one. Maybe they're related somehow. You know what I'm saying? Kaik Brito, maybe long lost brother. These guys both got that knockout power and, a little bit of submission upside to their own right, 3-0 to the sub. So I got to go back and watch his submission finishes. I don't think I saw any of those, but I did see a bunch of those vicious knockouts, and that's enough for me to say, hey, I don't really want to take the shot with most guys against him unless I'm getting bigger plus money. How do you feel in terms of any props here? Brito by KO is only plus 115. I mean, that's a non-starter for me. Brito by sub is plus 700 here. Basically, people think it's one-way submission equity, but if you really rock the heck out of somebody, you could just snatch that neck. So that's kind of curious, but I feel like he's a guy that preferences the knockout. You know what I'm saying?
I was upset that they opened the round 3 prop as little as they did. I was expecting some, plus 1,000, plus 1,200, but plus 750 right now. And I typically like more for my round 3
they
props,
opened a plus 800 too. Nothing doing there, huh? They're hip
good,
to it, brother.
That'd be how I'd look at it too. But I do think Brito gets it done.
Love it. So in any case, we can move along to the main event of the evening, my man. Zachary Reese, a guy that has had, what else could you say, but quite a short career. It has not been very much cage time accumulated. I watched almost his entire career in the 5 minutes before this show got started. Just wanted to make sure I was as up to date as possible on my research and information. I even went back and watched the Parker Didier fight, which went to round 2. I'll have you know. And this guy did, let's not forget, go to decision in his very first amateur fight. You know that was against Gordo? I bet you do.
Kevin Holland, baby.
Of course, brother. He fought Big Mouth. And so his only loss to a legit guy, but that was all the way back in 2012. Then he had about a bajillion canceled bouts until 2017. So I kind of want to get a little lowdown on that, figure out how that happened. But I did listen to his interview. Maybe not the most marketable guy I've ever heard from before, but his fighting style is certainly marketable in terms of how he goes out there and gets the finishes and whatever. And maybe he's just growing into his persona a little bit on camera. But in any case, curious what you think about this matchup, my man. We've got the main event of the evening here, just 4 fights. And his opponent here, Eli Aronov, I was not able to find as much footage on, was able to watch a fight that went to the second round. Seems like he's got a pretty clear style to read. He's going to come forward with a couple shots so he could try and take you down. Blast doubles, strong guy, wants to get on top, pass, look for his submissions, look for his ground and pound, does mix it up well with his top game. So what do you think about this matchup? And are you at all interested in betting it?
Man, I've been going back and forth on this one, but it's just a real question of, the unknowns here in this one. It's a very fun match, in my opinion. I think it is 2 different styles, but let's point out some clear things first, right? First things first, Reese going to have a huge size advantage. I mean, he towers over him at the weigh-in, 6'3" to 5'10". That's something you got to notice here. Second of all, you're going to have a lot of question marks behind Reese. And I'm glad you brought up that record, because I was thinking, man, between 2012 and 2017, he had 9 canceled bouts, right? I don't know what's happening there. Anyways, he fought once in 2012 to Kevin Holland, and then when Kevin Holland started making a run forward, it's like, maybe I'll come back, right? Maybe that was a one-time thing, and he's won everything since. And if your pro records are all gonna be first-round finishes, a lot of question marks behind him, right? He's a guy who I think is a very good dynamic finishing style, but there's a lot of questions to be answered in terms of his cardio, in terms of his ability to go fight against adversity, and in this case, his takedown defense, right? We haven't really seen him fight off his back, and this is something that Aronov's going to want him to do to him very early, very often. That is Aronov's style. It's him going to go down there, take him down, and for a lot of that, right? I don't think Aronov has much intentions to strike. I think he has pretty poor striking defense, and you add it into the fact that he's a much shorter guy, it seems like early on the advantage is going to go to Reese. The problem is if Aronov cannot get Reese out of there in that first round, how does both of their cardios look? Because on the slight amount of tape I saw from Aronov, his cardio seemed to wane down the stretch. And although that's something you can talk bad about him on, we don't know how Reese's cardio looks at all because he hasn't really been extended. We haven't seen all that stuff either. So there's a real question mark on that side of things. So do we want to rely on the guy we know slows down or the guy who probably slows down because we haven't seen him outside that first round? To me, it's a big question mark. Now, the path is definitely there for Aronov, but I'm leaning towards Reese here. I think he has the ability to land the more impactful shots on the feet. I think he has a decent ground game in his own right. And I just think that the striking disparity in the feet is much larger than the grappling disparity. And for that reason, with the question marks of cardio, gun to my head, I'm going to pick Reese here. But this is one I'm leaning towards the under if I could get a better line on it. But I'm going to pick Reese in this one.
Yeah, this is another interesting fight. And I'm a little bit tempted by the Aronov side. Now, the things that I don't love about the Aronov side are obvious, right? He's a much smaller guy. Doesn't seem like he is as damaging on the feet as his opponent here. So that could be a big problem. But Reese is coming out of the War Training Center, which I like in terms of the mental preparation. They've got, some of the right elements there. But you look at some of the guys that come out of there, Trevin Giles, a few others, maybe not always the best in-fight decision-making, and something that they're probably working on trying to improve with a lot of their fighters. But that's something that I am taking in mind here because Reese is a guy that hasn't faced that much adversity on the regionals, right? He's been doing quite well. He's very physically strong, to your point. He's a very big guy for the weight class. And so he leverages that, right? He goes out there, he kind of imposes his will on people. Does he look like the most sound defensive guy? Does he look like he's like, lights out on the feet? Does he look, particularly stellar in one area or the other? I didn't see that. I just felt like he was a guy that was way more athletic than his competition and use that to his advantage in every fight. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, leverage what you've got, but it just didn't blow me away on paper. He just wasn't a guy that I was watching and going, oh my God, like this guy's a future UFC champion or something. And so you look at his opponent on the other side, and I didn't see that either. But what did I see? I see a guy who's 5'10", and most people will see that as a disadvantage, right? He's a smaller guy. He's going against this big guy, but he wants to wrestle. So he's trying to grab a hold of this guy's hips, and he is going to be at like height level with them. So I feel like if he is able to push him back, this is a small octagon. This is the Dana White Contender Series. He could run him backwards, grab a hold of him. He's not a guy that's shooting takedowns with a lot of finesse, right? There's not a lot of like, I'm going to hit a single and then lift it and then go like this. What did he do? He grabs a hold of people and then just barrels over. He runs through their feet with a blast double leg takedown. And I feel like he's going to be at the level where he could do that. So early on in this fight, I think Aronov's probably going to get takedowns. But the question is, can he keep a guy like this down who's big and physical and muscular? One thing I'm going to go back and watch. Like I said, I watched the one fight where he got the takedowns. He looked like he had a decent idea of how to pass, and he did a good job of mixing up his ground game in terms of going for strikes and then going for submissions, looking for those opportunities. And I feel like I could definitely see him getting him down in the early going. And then I'm questioning where does Reese look off of his back? I feel like there was one crazy fight that Reese had. It might have even been the Didier fight. I'd have to go back and watch. But in any case, he had one fight where he was like going back and forth with this guy in weird scrambles and like pulled. I think the guy pulled guard into a guillotine, not him, but like the other guy. So he like gave up this top position when he had top. Like he literally was on top of Reese and then like pulled himself back with the guillotine and let the other guy on top of him. It was pretty boneheaded decision making. So in any case, I feel like, Reese has had a couple opponents that definitely weren't up to his level. And so I'm curious if Aronov can get to the hips, get some takedowns, and change the dynamic of this fight in the early going. Do you agree or disagree with that assessment? Because that was kind of like my read on paper is why he could be a live underdog. It's just like, are we sure he can't get to the hips and just take this guy down? Like,
no, he can, and that's the thing. Like that's what he wants to do. That's what he's going to be out there and able to do early. But the question for me more so is, not only is he able to control him, but say this fight gets extended, where's the cardio of Reese? Because that's a complete unknown. Whereas you see the guy in Aronov able to slow down on his fights. Can he maintain that same pace? Does he have the finishing instinct to get past the hips of a guy who's so tall, or fight through and get a finish on top. Does Aronov have that same decision equity you want from someone who's just going to be a pure wrestler?
Yeah, and dude, I'm looking at the fact that Aronov by decision is like plus 500. I mean, I think that's very plausible. But to your point, the downside is, Reese is one of these big muscular guys. I would assume he has to cut a decent amount of weight. I'll actually go back and watch the weigh-in to see what he looked like on the scale. I can't remember off the top of my head. But in any case, I do think that he's a guy that looks like he cuts more weight than Eli, and he looks like he's probably going to have more difficulty sustaining a pace. There's just some guys you could look at their build and see, more often than not, they're going to struggle in the cardio. If you're super, super muscular and you look like you're completely bricked out, that's just not, conducive to having great 5-round cardio, for example. We see those trends overall in MMA. So I think that Eli looks like a guy who's built to kind of just go out there and lay on somebody and grind. But if his opponent wants out, he'll probably find a way to do that. He does open up with some ground and pound. And so that's the kind of way you give guys an opportunity. If Reese does tire out here, if he fatigues, maybe that would give Eli his opportunity to get going in the fight. And you could find him as high as a plus 140 underdog on Bet Online right now. So people are liking the Reese side here. This opened up with Reese a minus 115. So about a pick 'em, and the public money coming in on the way of Reese. He actually flipped briefly to an underdog, my man, plus 115. Yep. And then it flipped all the way back. So volatile line movement here. But yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to either roll with the Israeli tank or I'm not going to roll at all.
Just fair on some dogger pass, especially when a guy is that clear of a path, right? Or on paper, at least.
Yeah. And honestly, this is it's a middleweight fight, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was going to say the fight goes to decision plus 300. I mean, it's so greasy for a Dana White Contender Series middleweight fight. I mean, those probably have a very high finishing rate overall. But then again, you got Cesar Almeida and the other guy. Yeah, exactly. But that one, I said, my prediction was Cesar Almeida by KO1 or split decision. Because I was like, I feel like it gets greasier the longer the fight goes, in that kind of scenario with two guys that aren't grapplers, or primary grapplers. Obviously, his opponent a better grappler than him on paper, but I didn't see it.
I'm still dwelling over my my KO ticket for Almeida not hitting there, man.
Oh, unreal, dude. Unreal. The referee has no shame. These guys have fight goes to decision tickets themselves. So maybe we got to get in on the fun at the plus 300. But in any case, my man, I think that about covers it. Is there anything else that you want to get off your chest about this card, about anything coming up? Is there a parlay you want to give out to the people? Is there anything you got? Because it's a tricky fight card from a betting perspective, in my view. And I feel like a lot of these fights are pretty greasy, dogger pass type situations. I picked only one favorite outright here, which is Brito. And, I'm not trying to, just pick dogs for the sake of it. I just looked at it before I looked at the lines, and that's who I had picked. There you go.
Yeah, recently we've been going over each one of our picks and seeing where we could lean into bets, but I have zero bets going into this. Genuinely, zero, none. I think the only bet I might make tomorrow might be on Brito. We've agreed on that one. I seem like I don't mind the line there at minus 160. So let's go over it quickly. I mean, there's only 4 fights. First one, Ring Pajuelo, fun fight. I think Ring's gonna have that on paper ability to take him down and score that way, but I don't want to trust him at this price tag. I think there's a real question mark behind his ability to take damage and deal with the forward pressure to Pajuelo. And for that reason, I don't really want to trust Ring at minus 165. Might be a dogger pass spot. Second one, Knutsson Verbeek. I think Knutsson has more pass to get it done. I think she's someone who should be the rightful favorite, but I'm not in a spot to be wanting to lay chalk on WMMA, especially when the opponent in front of her is so technical, so experienced in kickboxing. I think it could play out closer if Knutsson doesn't decide to utilize the clinch or the ground game, but she does have that in her back pocket. Brito should take over as the fight goes. Much more dynamic striker, has the ability to have the better cardio, ability to wear down the stretch as well. Oban Elliott has grappling success early on. I think he fades down the stretch. And then Aronov Reese, so many unknowns in this one. I like the fact that we know that we're going to get a grappler and Aronov go go for the takedowns, be able to land them. But I think the guy is more dangerous on the feet with the larger disparity that way. The taller guy, the guy with more question marks, but also ability to make those good question marks is Reese. So for that reason, those are the 4 picks there. Only thing I'm confident in is Brito, and even that there's some question marks as well. So very dangerous card. I think it'll be an entertaining one, but very dangerous as well.
Hell yeah, man. I think it's a volatile fight card. I'll go over my picks as well. Shout out to the chat, guys. Just want to say we got a lot of heavy hitters here as well. Crystal has been on fire, dropping some knowledge in the chat. Appreciate you. Legend says free UFC bet picks. Appreciate you, my brother. Very kind of you to say. Our guy Mushroom says great show as usual. Liam and Gordo. Appreciate you, Mushroom. And MMA Locker Room, my Pub Sports Radio brother, MMA Mafia. You know that. So, of course, trying to bring the heat each and every week. Let's go from bottom to the top. I think that Pajuelo is a live underdog here. Peru stand up. They've been on fire lately. And I just think when you're looking at the plus money number, Ring, good fighter on paper, but slightly less experience here. Still just 23 years of age, a lot of amateur experience, but this is a big step up here in front of a guy who's not afraid to get hit, who's not afraid to put it all on the line, who's got a ton of power, and who seems like unless he gets submitted here, he's going to be fighting like an absolute dog for your money, the entire time. So that just to me feels like the right side. If I have to take a plus money, plus 150 on an underdog there. Next up, Isis Verbeek is plus 250 in a fight that I think is going to go to a greasy split decision, guys. I think that both of these women are good. I think both these women have talent, but both of them come from a primary stand-up background. I think that most of the fights that you've seen Knutsson have, she's able to take free reign, walk women down, pressure the whole time. I think she's going to meet resistance. I think she's going to get hit in this fight. I think they're going to do damage to each other. I would not be surprised if both women bleed here. So I feel like this is a fight where it's going to look a lot closer than the odds would imply. I'm looking now at the opening odds for this fight. This fight opened a minus 500 for Knutsson, came all the way down, guys, to minus 245, minus 170, minus 185, and now it's shooting back up. So this has been a fight that has seen play on both sides. This is a sign of resistance, right? There was definitely some sharp market resistance at a certain point. So I just would be a little bit cautious here, laying a huge chalk price in WMMA with a girl who's got 5 professional MMA fights. And frankly, like I said, I pointed out in the breakdown, you guys can go check it out on Twitter at LiamPicksFights. I pointed out a specific example, took a screen grab of her kneeing somebody in the head that is a downed opponent. And she's done the exact same positional knee to the head of a downed opponent and gotten the fight stopped multiple times. So if she gets DQ'd, just know that I said it first. Now, next up, we've got Kaik, Brito, and me and Gordo, just a unanimous pick here on the Kaik, Brito side. It's no shade on Oban, Elliott. I hope that he does well in his career, in his endeavors. He's a tough guy. He's going to bring the fire. I like his mindset. I feel like he'll be back here if he loses this time out. But it just seems like they've got him against a tough guy who's got a lot of experience, who's a similar age, who's from a part of the world where they know how to wrestle, grapple, and get down, and they can throw big strikes on the feet. That last name, Brito, you won't find me fading it very often. So give me Brito here. And last but not least, give me the underdog in the main event. It is a middleweight fight. I think that Eli Aronov can get to takedowns here. I think he's a guy that will be able to grab a hold of his opponent. He's 5'10" against a 6'3" opponent who seems muscular. I think he could grind this guy out, whether that's pushing him against the fence or getting takedowns on the floor. And I think potentially, Reese, who's a big muscle bound guy who's used to having it his way, it could go sideways if it goes down to the mat for extended periods. Can he win by knockout? Absolutely. Is he a dangerous guy? No doubt about it. All the wins have said he dealt with, the level of competition accordingly. But we don't know how he fares against good competition because he hasn't fought him yet. So I think that this is going to be a tougher test for him. I think he's going to have a guy who wants it just as bad as he does. And as Corey Sandhagen says, then it comes down to skill. I feel like this guy might have the better skills on the mat. So unless I see something in the evidence that changes my mind, I'm leaning towards the underdog there as well. The Israeli tank, I think he might roll through. So this is a fair point. But he's been training at Extreme Couture. Shout out to our guy, Crystal, that pointed that out. And I think that, that's the right place to train, right? Francis Ngannou, how did he best Cyril Gane? He trained at Extreme Couture, baby. So I think that they know how to get down at Extreme. I think they get good training runs in. And by the way, who else I mentioned was training at Extreme Couture in the lead up to a fight at middleweight? Cesar Almeida. How'd that one go? Bing. So I'm not saying Jack about Jack, because Cesar Almeida is a great kickboxer. He had a way different background. But what I mean is, if anything's possible here in Extreme Couture, a team that's going to help you bring your grappling up to speed.
And even with that too, the opponent records is like Reese's is a combined opponent record 12-14, Aronov 16-3. Not facing the best level of competition, but neither is Reese.
Exactly. And one guy you're being asked to lay, the $1.60, and the other guy you're getting plus money on the return. So for me, it's kind of a toss-up fight. I feel like a pick'em's more appropriate, just based on what I saw. So I'm going to dig a little deeper and see if I change my mind there. But watching him go out there, get takedowns, look like he had a process-oriented top game, seems like that seems to me like something that would work on the Contender Series potentially against a big muscled up guy who hasn't really been in many extended fights. So shout out to a legend of the space, Brett Apley. Appreciate you watching, my brother, and thank you for supporting the show. Method of victory for Brito. Not going to get much value on that one, my man, but I think it's going to be a knockout more often than not. He's a guy that preferences that. I believe 13 wins by knockout, but subs plus 700, and I'm just saying, anything's possible, bro. I think his opponent will be trying to wrestle him.
And I think for that reason, what is it? Is it DraftKings that has the ones that's like over 1.5 combined as well? I think the Brito finish comes later on as Elliott slows down. Maybe get some value on that.
He likes that correlated parlay. Okay, I feel you, Dodd. The one thing I would say, though, is just the danger factor there. This guy Brito has power where he could hit somebody once and then they just shut off. So that I would sprinkle, but I do think he's probably going to get the finish here in a win more often than not. The guy hits like a truck. So
I know Mushroom just wanted his value, his plus 800s, right?
Of course. You need to get the value. Guys, I want to say, first and foremost, make sure that you follow the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Make sure that you support our guy Gordo, because next week for week 4, that's exactly where we'll be breaking down this content. Gordo, please let the people know all the great stuff you got going on this week and all the places that they can find you, my man.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I film my full card breakdown, picks and predictions, DraftKings, and betting for UFC Singapore earlier today. So that should be out tomorrow afternoon. It is the blessed ever fight week. We got our boy Max going at it. So that video is up. Is filmed. Will be edited out tomorrow afternoon. I'll make sure to tweet about that. You can check that all out at Gambles Gordo on Twitter. Yeah, like you said, man, we're back on my channel next week, Plays and Fade Sports. We'll be talking about it there. That's also where you'll find my breakdowns for this week, my breakdowns for every week. And if you guys want even more premium content, check out Daily Fan MMA. That's where I post a lot of my I do premium podcasts there, projection for DraftKings, fun stuff. But no, Dynamo Contender Series on Tuesday. Then we got fights on Saturday. And guess what we have this week, man? We got some PFL on Wednesday. So maybe I'll dive into that. Check out the Twitter. Maybe I'll throw some stuff down for that. It seems like a decent card. And I'll try to get as much action as I can in on the weeks where I'm not studying for finals, right? Come on. So no school, more fights. That's the way I like to see it.
Absolutely love it, my man. And as far as what I've got going on, guys, you can find me everywhere at LiamPicksFights. That's on social media. That's also on Patreon. If you guys are looking to go deeper into the information, I have notes like these on our guy Pajuelo, and I have notes on a bunch of other fighters, and it's going to continue to grow from now till Contender Series time. I make navigation documents that make it very clear where you can find all the information on the card, other YouTube breakdowns that are really solid. I really try and make it very straightforward for people that are trying to bet on these events to have the best information available to them. What they do with that information, up to them. If I'm taking any bets, I'll always let you guys know first on Patreon what they are. But the bottom line is I try and create world-class information each and every week, each and every event on Contender Series and on the UFC. And that's what we strive to do. So last week, 10-2 on the predictions for the UFC. The bets just didn't come through. I had the ends by sub in the co-main event. I mean, I don't know what more you could ask for. 15 minutes of control time. What was that? 3 sub attempts from the underdog and complete top domination from the favorite. Sometimes they just don't break your way, but in any case, the closing line value, the things that we're looking for as indicators, they're there. It just wasn't our night. So right back at it each and every time, and always transparent and accountable as well. So right back to work. Shout out to our guy, Clint, the Die Hard MMA podcast, one of the very best out there. I'm late, going to have to start at the beginning. Thanks for the show in advance, boys. Much love and appreciate you, Clint. Thanks for watching and tuning in. Thanks to the chat for for tuning in. Thanks to my brother Gordo for being on the show. Thanks to our brother Mushroom MMA for the support. And thank you to all of you guys who watch and support the show. If you're looking for my content, you can find me on podcasts as well. Liam Picks Fights presents. We're going to drop the Contender Series breakdown this week as well. Timestamps coming shortly. So God bless you all. I hope that you guys enjoy the fights. Good luck on any bets that you take. And until next time, come back and we'll have all the same fun again. Don't forget Plays and Fades YouTube channel next week. Make sure you subscribe for week 4 of Contender Series. Thanks, everybody. Take care.